continue to be the key tool to ensure social mobility. It enables our young, regardless of background, to hope, to aspire, and to achieve. The result is that hundreds of thousands of Singaporeans have benefited from our education system and beat the odds with the hand that life has dealt them. 15 years ago, 5 in 10 students from the bottom socio-economic quintile progressed to post-secondary education. That means at least IT, polytechnic, or university. Today it is 9 in 10. 15 years ago, 40% of students in the bottom socio-economic quintile progressed to publicly funded degree or diploma programs. Today that has increased from 40% to 50%. And so we have seen some very good progress, but the job is getting harder as we are fighting against some strong social headwinds. What used to work for us is starting to work against us. Take meritocracy. It recognizes talent and ability over wealth and circumstances of birth, and motivates society and people to work hard. But as families do well, they spare no effort in investing in the abilities of their children, especially when they believe in meritocracy. As a result, children from different family backgrounds are pushing off blocks from different starting lines. So meritocracy, arising from a belief in fairness, seems to have paradoxically resulted in systemic unfairness. A second headwind is the achievement inequality. As education successfully uplifts families, the percentage of students from lower income families is shrinking. 10 years ago, about 20% of our employed households had an income $3,000 or less at 2017 dollars. Today that has gone down to well below 15%. Many of us will have the same experience. When I was studying in primary school, my whole class, great majority, are from humble backgrounds. Today in a class, much fewer students are from humble backgrounds. But that also means that the smaller group of families that continue to remain poor and lower income are facing more difficult challenges. Every time we read stories about these families, we feel a strong sense of sympathy, sometimes even a sense of injustice. But they have always been there through the years and through the decades, except that in the past, they were part of a much bigger group that many of us belong to as well. So the more meritocracy works, the more it looks like systemic unfairness. The more we uplift families, the harder it is to uplift those who remain poor. So paradoxically, these challenges result from success, not failure of our policies. It is important to recognize this very fundamental point, because it will guide our actions going forward. If we think that, and mistakenly think, that the challenges result from policy failure, we will discard the policies and the philosophies that we have put in place. And whatever we replace them with are most likely going to be worse. Conversely, if we recognize that the challenges are a result of sound policies having to adjust to new realities, then our conclusion will be quite different. We will want to evolve and improve existing policies to suit the challenges of our time. So let us not discard meritocracy, for I don't think it has finished running its useful course. Despite all the criticism of meritocracy, many of which are valid, no one has come up with something better. Just like Winston Churchill said, democracy is a terrible system, except everything else is worse. So we need to double down on meritocracy, move away from a narrow focus on past academic merit to recognize and celebrate a broader range of skills, talents, and strengths. It should translate into tangible changes in the way we hire people, admit students to tertiary institutions, grant awards and scholarships, and accord respect to fellow Singaporeans. As for reducing achievement inequality, the tempting solution is to chop down the tall poppies to equalize outcomes. This goes against the nature and instinct of Singaporeans who always strive to do our best. So let's not cap the top, but do even better in lifting the disadvantaged. This bears out in findings of a report published by the OECD, which was released only yesterday. They found that even as our top students pull ahead of the rest of OECD countries, education in Singapore continues to spur social mobility for our students from lower socio-economic backgrounds. Take, for example, to illustrate, about 50% of our students from disadvantaged backgrounds perform better than predicted by their family background, compared to the OECD average of 30%. More than 40% of students from disadvantaged backgrounds in Singapore do well in core skills such as reading and math, compared to OECD, 25%. Even as we help our top students soar, we spare no effort in ensuring that every student can achieve his or her potential. Nevertheless, there is still room for improvement. The concentration of disadvantaged and privileged students have intensified in certain schools, as observed by the OECD report, and we can do more to counter this unhealthy trend. One way is to foster a better mix of students in every school. For example, from next year's Secondary 1 posting exercise, MOE will reserve 20% of school places for students without affiliation to the secondary school. Another way is to continue to ensure that all schools are well-resourced and supported. Today, MOE skills resources in favor of weaker students. We set up specialized schools, students of which are here today. Northlight, Assumption Pathway, Spectra, and Crest, to provide a whole school education approach to better meet their students' needs. For example, they offer curricula that are practice-oriented and more technical in nature to help students acquire skills that will put them in good stead to find a job and start a career after they graduate. Each student in these specialized schools receives about $24,000 per year in resourcing. Each student in the normal technical stream receives about $20,000 in resourcing, while others in the other streams receive less, about $15,000 or less per student. We have recently enhanced the MOE financial assistance scheme by raising the income eligibility criteria to benefit more students from lower income households. Students on the scheme need not worry about school fees, nor textbooks, nor uniforms. Schools can also tap on what we call the Opportunity Fund to help students cover significant school expenses such as overseas learning trips or purchase of computer devices. We also increased the meals provision for lower income students from 7 meals a week to 10 meals a week under what we call the School Meals Program. I spoke to a few of these secondary school students on the scheme when I visited a secondary school recently called Northland Secondary. They carry an EZ-Link card. It is topped up every morning by the school to cover expenses for meals, breakfast plus recess. On the day they had CCA, the top-up amount is more because it will also cover lunch. And they use the card to pay for their meals in the school canteen and they just tap. These students, I did ask them, is the EZ-Link card, can you use the money to take MRT? They say no, there's two separate amounts. The amount is only for meals in their canteen. And these students need not worry about going hungry in school, and they can focus on learning. Today, about 50,000 students from lower income families are on the scheme. In addition, we are investing heavily in preschool education, with 1/3 of MOE kindergarten places reserved for students from lower income families. By 2020, we will have student care centers in every school to provide students with a conducive environment to study and to complete their homework. Our schools alone will not be able to provide such a high level of education and care and they should continue to tap on community resources provided by do-gooders such as you. The contribution from individuals, communities, and businesses go beyond monetary donations. One example, in 2010, Mr. Peter Lim, he set up the Singapore Olympic Foundation Peter Lim Scholarship to help deserving sports talents from humble backgrounds